I never thought I would end up in a standoff with a 52-year-old woman named Brenda over a dumpster. But here we are. Living in the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision in Gilbert, Arizona. I had always assumed my biggest problems would be scorpions in the garage, or maybe a busted air conditioner in the middle of July. Instead, I found myself locked in an escalating war with the most insufferable president of a homeowners association I could have ever imagined. My name is Jason Ingram, and I am a 34-year-old software engineer who works from home most days. I bought my house 3 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style place with a decent-sized yard and a 2-car garage. The neighborhood seemed perfect when I first moved in. Everyone was friendly, the houses were well-maintained, and the community amenities included a pool, a small park, and several shared dumpsters scattered throughout the development for residents to use. That was before Brenda Morrison became HOA president. Brenda lived 4 houses down from me on the same street, in a beige stucco house that looked identical to about half the other homes in the neighborhood. She was a divorce attorney who apparently brought the same combative energy from her courtroom battles into every HOA board meeting. Within 2 months of taking office, she had implemented a color-coded trash system that nobody asked for, increased our monthly dues by 30%, and sent violation notices to at least half the neighborhood for infractions ranging from having your garage door open for more than 10 minutes to parking a car on the street overnight. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in March. I had just finished my morning coffee and was settling in at my home office when I heard a loud scraping sound coming from outside. At first, I thought it might be a landscaping crew, but the noise was too metallic, too jarring. I walked to my front window and looked out onto my driveway. There, being dragged across my front lawn by a pickup truck, was one of the community dumpsters. The heavy steel container was gouging deep ruts into my grass, and the truck was backing it directly onto the corner of my property, where my lot met the sidewalk. Behind the wheel of the truck was none other than Brenda Morrison herself, her face set in grim determination as she maneuvered the dumpster into position. I rushed outside, not even bothering to put on shoes. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted as I ran across my lawn. Brenda turned off the truck engine and climbed out, holding a clipboard like it was a shield. "Good morning, Jason. I am relocating this dumpster to a more appropriate location as per HOA regulations. On my property. Are you insane?" She pushed her glasses up her nose and consulted her clipboard. According to the revised waste management plan that was voted on at last month's meeting, which you did not attend, dumpster locations are to be reassigned to optimize collection efficiency. This dumpster is now assigned to your lot. You cannot just drag a dumpster onto my property without asking me first. Actually, I can. Section 12.4 of the HOA bylaws states that the board has authority over all common property management decisions, including waste receptacles. This dumpster serves 8 homes, including yours. You are now the designated host location. I stared at her in disbelief. "Brenda, this thing is massive. It is going to block my driveway, ruin my grass, and smell like garbage all week. There is no way this is legal." "It is perfectly legal, and I have the documentation right here." She held up the clipboard, showing me a page filled with dense text that I could not possibly read from where I stood. "The dumpster will be emptied every Thursday morning. You should feel privileged to be contributing to the community in this way." "Privileged? You just destroyed my lawn dragging this thing over here." Brenda glanced at the deep furrows in my grass and shrugged. "You can file a landscaping claim with the HOA. We will review it at next month's meeting." "Next month? That is 4 weeks away." "Correct. In the meantime, the dumpster stays. Have a nice day, Jason." She climbed back into her truck, unhooked the chain she had used to drag the dumpster, and drove away without another word. I stood there in my bare feet, staring at the enormous blue dumpster that now sat on the edge of my property like some kind of industrial sculpture. It was at least 8 feet long and 6 feet tall, already half filled with trash bags and what looked like someone's broken patio furniture. The smell hit me a moment later, a ripe combination of rotting food and sun-baked garbage that made my eyes water. This could not be happening. I pulled out my phone and called my neighbor Marcus, who lived 2 doors down. Marcus had been in the neighborhood longer than me and had served on the HOA board before Brenda took over. If anyone would know how to handle this, it would be him. "Marcus, it is Jason. Brenda just dragged a community dumpster onto my property. Can she actually do this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "She did what?" She hooked a chain to one of the dumpsters and dragged it onto my lot. Said it was part of some waste management plan from last month's meeting. "My lawn looks like a war zone." Marcus sighed heavily. "Man, I am sorry." "Yeah, she has been talking about redistribution of the dumpsters for weeks. I thought it was just another one of her power trip ideas that would never happen." "Did she give you any notice?" "None. I looked out my window and there she was, tearing up my grass." Technically, the HOA does have authority over common property, including the dumpsters, but they are supposed to give residents reasonable notice before making changes that affect individual properties. You should have gotten at least 30 days warning in writing. I got nothing. Not a letter, not an email, nothing. Then she is overstepping. You have grounds to challenge this. But Jason, I have to warn you, Brenda does not back down easy. She has been looking for ways to consolidate her power since she took office. If you push back, she is going to make your life hell. My life is already hell. I have a giant dumpster on my property. Fair point. Look, you can request an emergency board meeting to address this. You need to submit a written complaint to the board within 48 hours. I will back you up. Thanks, Marcus, I appreciate it. I hung up and immediately started drafting an email to the HOA board. I kept it professional but firm, outlining my objections and requesting that the dumpster be removed immediately. I sent copies to all 5 board members, including Brenda, and CC'd my personal email account for documentation. The response came within an hour, but not from the full board. It was from Brenda alone. "Dear Jason, your complaint has been received and will be reviewed at the next scheduled board meeting on April 15th. In the meantime, the dumpster remains in its designated location. Please ensure that you do not obstruct access to the dumpster or interfere with waste collection services. Failure to comply may result in fines. Regards, Brenda Morrison, HOA President." April 15th was 3 weeks away. She expected me to live with this monstrosity on my property for 3 weeks before she would even discuss it. I called a lawyer that afternoon, a guy named Tom Chen who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. His office was in downtown Phoenix, about a 40-minute drive from Gilbert. I explained the situation over the phone, and he agreed to meet with me the next morning. Tom's office was on the 7th floor of a glass and steel building with a view of the city sprawl. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with a sharp suit and an easy confidence that immediately put me at ease. "So, Brenda Morrison strikes again," he said after I finished explaining. "She has a reputation. I have dealt with her in 2 other cases." "Seriously?" "Oh yeah. She is a piece of work. Thinks the HOA bylaws give her unlimited power. They don't, but she is really good at finding loopholes." He leaned back in his chair. "Here is the thing, Jason. HOAs do have broad authority over common property, but they have to follow their own procedures. If she did not give you proper notice, and if there is no specific provision in your bylaws about dumping dumpsters on individual lots without consent, then she has violated her fiduciary duty to the homeowners. What can I do about it? You have a few options. 1. You can file a formal complaint with the board and hope they override her decision. 2. You can sue the HOA for injunctive relief, asking a court to order them to move the dumpster. Or 3. You can move it yourself. Move it myself, Tom shrugged. It is a dumpster. If it is on your property without your permission, you have a right to remove it. Just be smart about how you do it. Do not damage HOA property. Do not dump it somewhere illegal, and document everything. So I could just call a tow truck and have it removed. Technically, yes. But here is the catch. Brenda will retaliate. She will fine you, probably try to sue you for interfering with HOA operations, and she will make the next few months of your life miserable. You have to decide if you are ready for that fight. I thought about the dumpster sitting on my lawn, about the smell, about the 3 weeks I would have to wait just to have a conversation about it. I thought about Brenda's smug expression as she drove away. I am ready, I said. Tom nodded approvingly. Then here is what you do. Document everything. Take pictures, save all your emails, keep a log of any interactions with Brenda or the board. When you move the dumpster, do it during daylight hours with witnesses present. And whatever you do, do not dump it somewhere random. If you are going to make a point, make it count. I spent the rest of the day researching towing companies that handled large containers. Most of the local companies dealt with cars and trucks, but I finally found a commercial hauling outfit called Southwest Heavy Lift that specialized in construction equipment and industrial waste containers. I called them and explained what I needed. You want us to move a dumpster from your property to another residential address? The dispatcher asked, sounding skeptical. That is right. It was placed on my property without my permission, and I want it removed. We can do that, but it is going to cost you. We charge by the hour for jobs like this, plus a mobilization fee, probably looking at $400 minimum. That is fine. How soon can you come out? We have a crew available tomorrow afternoon around 2. Perfect. I will text you the address. That evening, I walked down to Brenda's house. I wanted to give her one last chance to do the right thing before I escalated the situation. I rang her doorbell and waited, rehearsing what I would say in my head. She answered after a minute, still wearing her work clothes, a tailored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Jason, what can I do for you? I want to talk about the dumpster. I already responded to your email. The matter will be discussed at the next board meeting. Brenda, come on. You cannot seriously expect me to live with that thing on my property for 3 weeks. It is already attracting flies and the smell is unbearable. Just move it somewhere else. The decision has been made, Jason. The dumpster serves your section of the neighborhood, and your lot was determined to be the most central location. Most central. There is a common area 2 streets over that is literally designed for stuff like this. Why not put it there? Because that area is reserved for community events. We have a spring festival coming up in May. Then put it in front of someone else's house. Why does it have to be mine? Brenda crossed her arms. Are you asking me to show favoritism, Jason? Because that would be a violation of my duties as president. Every homeowner in this association is equal, and we all have to make sacrifices for the common good. Then put it in front of your house. Her expression hardened. My property is not suitable for dumpster placement due to lot configuration and street access. This has all been carefully considered and approved by the board. The board? You mean you? The board voted unanimously. Of course they did, Because you stack the board with people who do whatever you tell them to do. Brenda stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. I am going to give you some advice, Jason. You are new here and you do not understand how things work yet. I have been in this neighborhood for 12 years. I know every bylaw, every covenant, every single rule that governs this community. If you want to fight me on this, go ahead. But I promise you, you will lose, and when you do, I will make sure you regret wasting my time. I stared at her, feeling my anger rise. We will see about that. I turned and walked away before I said something I would regret. Behind me, I heard her door slam shut with enough force to rattle the frame. The next afternoon, right on schedule, a massive flatbed truck from Southwest Heavy Lift pulled up in front of my house. Two guys climbed out, both wearing high-visibility vests and work gloves. The older one, a guy in his 50s with a gray beard, introduced himself as Ray. "So, you are the guy with the dumpster problem," he said, walking over to inspect the container. "Yeah, we can move this, no issue. Where do you want it?" I pulled out my phone and showed him Brenda's address, which I had already mapped out. 4 houses down on the left. I want it placed on the corner of her lot, right where she put it on mine. Ray raised an eyebrow. HOA dispute, something like that, he chuckled. Man, I do not miss living in one of those neighborhoods. All right, let us get this done. I had invited Marcus to come over and witness the move, and he showed up just as the crew was hooking chains to the dumpster. He had brought his video camera and was filming everything from multiple angles. "This is either the best or worst decision you have ever made," Marcus said, grinning. "Probably both," I replied. The crew worked efficiently, using a winch system to pull the dumpster onto the flatbed. It took about 20 minutes to secure it properly, and then they were ready to drive it down the street. I followed in my car with Marcus riding shotgun, both of us feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. When we pulled up in front of Brenda's house, the crew wasted no time. They backed the flatbed onto her lawn, positioning it in almost the exact same spot where she had placed the dumpster on my property. Then they lowered the container, the metal scraping against the truck bed as it slid into place. When they were done, the dumpster sat on the edge of Brenda's lot, its bulk blocking part of her view of the street. Ray walked over to my car window. "All set. You want us to unhook and leave it, right?" "That is right. Leave it exactly where it is." "You got it, boss." The crew packed up their equipment and drove away, leaving Marcus and me standing on the sidewalk, staring at our handiwork. The dumpster looked even bigger on Brenda's manicured lawn than it had on mine. "How long do you think it will take her to notice?" Marcus asked. "She works from home on Wednesdays. I give it 5 minutes. It took 3. The front door flew open and Brenda came storming out, her face flushed with rage. "What the hell is this, Jason?" I walked calmly up her driveway, keeping my expression neutral. "Hi, Brenda." I relocated the dumpster to a more appropriate location. "I hope you do not mind." "You cannot do this. This is my property." "Funny, that is exactly what I said to you yesterday. But according to you, the HOA has authority over all common property management decisions, including waste receptacles. This dumpster serves 8 homes, including yours. Congratulations, you are now the designated host location." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "This is vandalism. This is trespassing. No, it is community service. You should feel privileged to be contributing to the neighborhood in this way." Marcus was still filming, capturing every moment of Brenda's meltdown. She turned on him. "Stop filming me right now, public property," Marcus said cheerfully. "I can film whatever I want." Brenda pulled out her phone and jabbed at the screen. "I am calling the police. You are both going to be arrested." "Go ahead," I said. "I will wait right here." She dialed and stepped away, speaking in rapid, angry bursts to whoever answered. Marcus and I stood by my car waiting. A few neighbors had come out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. I recognized most of them, people I waved to occasionally but did not really know. They were all staring at the dumpster, then at Brenda, then at me, trying to piece together what was happening. 2 Gilbert police officers arrived about 15 minutes later, driving separate patrol cars. They parked on the street and approached cautiously, clearly unsure what kind of situation they were walking into. The younger officer, a woman in her late 20s, spoke first. "We got a call about trespassing and property damage. Who wants to explain what is going on?" Brenda immediately launched into a tirade. "This man, Jason Ingram, hired a tow truck to move HOA property onto my private lot without permission. He is trying to harass me because of a legitimate HOA decision. I want him arrested." The officer turned to me. "Sir, is that accurate?" "Partially," I said. "The dumpster was originally on my property also without my permission. Miss Morrison, who is the HOA president, had it placed there 2 days ago. I requested that it be moved and she refused, so I hired a company to relocate it to her property. She seemed to think it was fine to put it on mine without asking. I figured she wouldn't mind hosting it herself." The second officer, an older man with sergeant stripes, suppressed a smile. "This is an HOA thing, is not it?" "Yes, sir," I said. "And you moved it to prove a point." "I moved it because I did not give permission for it to be on my property, and I have a right to remove items that are trespassing on my land." The sergeant looked at Brenda. "Madam, did the HOA give Mr. Ingram notice before placing the dumpster on his lot?" "I do not have to give individual notice for operational decisions approved by the board," Brenda snapped. "Actually, you probably do," the sergeant said. "But that is a civil matter, not a criminal one. This sounds like an HOA dispute, which means you need to work it out amongst yourselves or take it to court. There is no crime here. He trespassed on my property. He moved a dumpster. He did not break into your house or damage anything. If you want, you can file a civil complaint, but we are not arresting anyone." Brenda looked like she was about to explode. "This is ridiculous. He is harassing me." "Madam, you put the dumpster on his property first. He just returned the favor." The sergeant turned to me. "Sir, I am going to suggest you find a better way to resolve this. Moving dumpsters back and forth is not going to solve anything." "I agree," I said. "I tried to resolve it through proper channels, but Miss Morrison refused to cooperate. I am happy to work this out, but the dumpster cannot stay on my property." The sergeant looked between us. "Here is what is going to happen. You two are going to figure out where this dumpster belongs, and it is going to stay there. If I have to come back out here because you are playing dumpster ping pong, I am going to be very unhappy." "Understood." We both nodded, though Brenda looked like she was chewing nails. After the officers left, Brenda stalked over to me. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Jason. I am going to bury you in fines. I am going to make you wish you never moved into this neighborhood." "Looking forward to it," I said. That evening, I got an email from Brenda with the subject line, "Violations Notice." She had apparently spent the afternoon combing through the HOA bylaws to find every possible infraction she could pin on me. The list was absurd. My garage door had been open for more than 15 minutes on 3 occasions in the past month. My grass was 1 inch taller than the maximum allowed height. I had failed to submit an architectural review application for a wind chime hanging on my back porch, and I had parked my car on the street overnight in violation of community parking policies. Each violation carried a $50 fine. The total was $400, due within 30 days. I forwarded the email to Tom Chen with a note. "Let the games begin." Tom called me the next morning. Okay, so she is going nuclear. Most of these violations are bogus or unenforceable. The grass height thing is subjective. The garage door policy has no enforcement mechanism, and the wind chime thing is just petty. But she is going to keep piling on until you either give up or fight back. I am fighting back. Good. I am going to draft a response to each violation, and we are going to request an itemized explanation of how she measured your grass, how she determined your garage door was open too long, and what architectural review process she is referring to. In the meantime, do not pay a single dollar of those fines. If she tries to put a lien on your house, we will take her to court. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation escalated in ways I never could have imagined. Brenda sent me daily emails detailing new violations, some of which were so ridiculous I thought she was joking. She claimed my doormat was not an approved color. She said my mailbox was 3 inches too far to the left. She even cited me for having a garden hose visible from the street, which apparently violated some obscure aesthetic guideline buried in the bylaws. I responded to each email with detailed rebuttals, copying the entire HOA board and my lawyer. Marcus helped me document everything, taking photos and videos to prove that most of Brenda's claims were either exaggerated or outright fabrications. Meanwhile, the dumpster remained on Brenda's property. She tried several times to have it moved, but every towing company she called refused to touch it after I informed them that relocating the dumpster without my consent would constitute theft of services, since I had paid to have it placed there. It was a legal gray area, but it was enough to make the companies wary. The other homeowners in the neighborhood started to take notice. People began showing up at my door, sharing their own horror stories about Brenda. Apparently, I was not the only one she had been targeting. She had fined a retired couple for having bird feeders that attracted too many sparrows. She had threatened to sue a young family for letting their kids draw with sidewalk chalk on the driveway. She had even tried to ban one guy's service dog, claiming it was not a legitimate medical animal. A week before the scheduled board meeting, Marcus and I organized an informal gathering at the community park. We invited everyone who had received bogus fines or harassment from Brenda, and nearly 30 people showed up. The stories they shared were infuriating. Brenda had been systematically bullying residents for over a year, using the HOA bylaws as a weapon to control and intimidate anyone who questioned her authority. One woman, a nurse named Patricia, broke down in tears as she described how Brenda had tried to foreclose on her house over $1,500 in fines for not repainting her shutters the exact shade of beige specified in the covenants. Patricia had been working double shifts at the hospital and simply had not had time to deal with it, but Brenda showed no mercy. She does not care about the community, Patricia said, wiping her eyes. She just wants power. She gets off on making people miserable. By the end of the meeting, we had formed a coalition. We agreed to attend the upcoming board meeting in force and demand Brenda's resignation. If she refused, we would petition to recall her and hold a new election. Arizona law allowed for HOA board recalls if 20% of homeowners signed a petition, and we already had more than enough support. The night before the board meeting, I got a knock on my door. I opened it to find Brenda standing there, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure." She walked into my living room and stood awkwardly by the couch, not sitting down. "I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow." "Okay. I know you have been organizing people against me. I know about the recall petition." "We are exercising our rights as homeowners, Brenda. You have been abusing your position and people are tired of it." She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. I never meant for things to get this bad. I just wanted to make the neighborhood better, nicer, more organized. By fining people for sidewalk chalk, by threatening to foreclose on someone's house over paint colors, I was following the rules. You were hiding behind the rules so you could bully people. There is a difference. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something other than arrogance in her expression. She looked tired. I am not good at this, she admitted. Being in charge, I mean. I thought if I enforced the bylaws strictly, people would respect me, but I just made everyone hate me. Yeah, you did. I will move the dumpster back to the common area, and I will rescind all the fines I issued to you and anyone else who has been complaining. Just call off the recall. I shook my head. It is not about the dumpster anymore, Brenda. It is about the way you have treated people. You cannot bully someone for a year and then apologize when you realize you are about to lose your position. That is not how this works. So what? You are just going to destroy me, make an example out of me. I am going to let the homeowners decide what happens to you. If they vote to recall you, that is their choice. But I am not calling off anything. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. The board meeting the next night was packed. The small community center where the HOA held its meetings had seating for about 50 people, but at least 80 showed up. People lined the walls and spilled out into the hallway, all of them waiting to have their say. Brenda sat at the head table with the other 4 board members, looking pale and nervous. She called the meeting to order and tried to proceed with the normal agenda, but people were not having it. Marcus stood up first. I move that we skip the regular agenda and address the issue of board misconduct. Seconded, Patricia called out from the back of the room. Brenda banged her gavel. That is not how this works. We have a set agenda. Then I move to amend the agenda, Marcus said calmly. All in favor. Nearly every hand in the room went up. Brenda looked around, realizing she had lost control. Fine. What do you want to discuss? Your resignation, someone shouted. The room erupted in agreement. People started standing up, one after another, sharing their stories about Brenda's abuse of power. The board members listened, their expressions growing more uncomfortable with each testimony. It became clear that most of them had been rubber-stamping Brenda's decisions without really understanding what she was doing. When it was my turn, I stood and addressed the room. Brenda Morrison has used her position to harass, intimidate, and financially harm members of this community. She has issued arbitrary fines, ignored proper procedures, and retaliated against anyone who questioned her authority. I am calling for her immediate removal as HOA president and a full audit of all fines and fees collected during her tenure. The applause was deafening. One of the other board members, a guy named Stephen who worked in banking, raised his hand. I want to say something. I have been on this board for 2 years, and I did not realize how bad things had gotten. I approved a lot of Brenda's proposals because I trusted her judgment. But after hearing all of this, I cannot in good conscience continue to support her leadership. I am voting to remove her as president. Another board member, a woman named Linda, nodded. I agree. This has gone too far. Brenda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You cannot do this. I have done everything by the book. I have followed every rule. You have twisted every rule to suit your own agenda, Stephen said. That is not leadership. That is tyranny. The vote was called and it was unanimous. Brenda Morrison was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. The board appointed Stephen as interim president and scheduled a special election for the following month. Brenda gathered her things and walked out of the meeting without another word, her face flushed with humiliation. A few people clapped as she left, but most just watched in silence. After the meeting, I stayed behind to help clean up. Marcus came over and clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it, man. You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected. "This was not just me." "True, but you started it. If you had not moved that dumpster, none of this would have happened." I thought about that. He was right, in a way. The dumpster had been the catalyst, the single act of defiance that had given other people the courage to speak up. Sometimes, standing up to a bully is not about winning a fight. It is about refusing to be pushed around, even if it means taking a risk. The following week, the dumpster was moved to the common area where it should have been all along. Stephen issued a formal apology to everyone who had been fined under Brenda's administration, and the board voted to refund all fees collected for bogus violations. They also implemented new policies requiring board approval for any fines over $25 and mandatory notice periods for operational changes affecting individual properties. Brenda put her house on the market 2 months later and moved out of the neighborhood. I heard through the grapevine that she had taken a job at a law firm in Scottsdale and was no longer involved in any HOA activities. I hoped, for the sake of her new neighbors, that she had learned something from the experience. As for me, life in Meadowbrook Estates went back to normal. I could park on the street if I needed to. My wind chime stayed on my porch. My grass grew to whatever height it wanted within reason. The neighborhood felt like a community again, instead of a police state. And whenever I drove past the common area and saw that blue dumpster sitting peacefully in its designated spot, I could not help but smile. It had started as a petty act of revenge, dragging that thing to Brenda's house. But in the end, it had become something more. It had become a symbol of resistance, a reminder that even the smallest act of defiance can spark real change. I never thought I would be the guy to take on an HOA president, but life has a funny way of putting you in situations where you have to decide who you want to be. You can roll over and accept injustice, or you can stand up and fight, even if the weapon you are fighting with is a community dumpster. I chose to fight, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. Living in an HOA neighborhood had always seemed like a reasonable trade-off to me. You get well-maintained common areas, consistent property values, and a sense of order. But what I learned from the whole mess with Brenda is that the system only works when the people in charge actually care about the community they are serving. When someone like Brenda takes control, someone who sees the bylaws as a tool for personal power rather than community good, the whole thing falls apart. The months following Brenda's departure were surprisingly peaceful. Stephen turned out to be a competent and fair president. He held regular town halls where residents could voice concerns without fear of retaliation, and he worked to simplify the more ridiculous bylaws that Brenda had used as weapons. The board approved a new set of guidelines that focused on genuine community issues like safety and property maintenance, rather than nitpicking about doormat colors and wind chimes. I got to know my neighbors better during this time. Patricia, the nurse who had nearly lost her house over shutter paint, became a good friend. She invited me over for dinner a few times, and we laughed about how absurd the whole situation had been. She told me that getting her fines refunded had been a huge relief, both financially and emotionally. Marcus and I started a tradition of meeting for coffee every Saturday morning at a local shop in downtown Gilbert. We would talk about everything from work to sports to neighborhood gossip, though there was mercifully less of the latter now that Brenda was gone. He told me that several people had approached him about running for the board in the upcoming election, impressed by how he had helped organize the resistance against Brenda. "You should run too," he said one Saturday, stirring sugar into his coffee. "People trust you. They know you will stand up for what is right." I considered it. The idea of being on an HOA board had never appealed to me before, mostly because I associated it with people like Brenda who craved petty authority. But maybe that was exactly why I should do it. If good people refused to get involved, then the Brendas of the world would keep taking over. Maybe, I said. Let me think about it. The special election was held in late May, on a warm Arizona evening that felt more like summer than spring. 15 people had thrown their names in for the 5 board positions, and the turnout was impressive. Nearly 70% of the homeowners showed up to vote, a dramatic increase from previous years when Brenda had run unopposed, and barely 20% of residents had bothered to participate. I decided to run after all, mostly because Patricia had convinced me. We need people who understand what it is like to be on the receiving end of HOA abuse, she had said. You have lived it. You will never forget how it feels. She was right. I knew exactly how it felt to be powerless against a system that was supposed to serve me, and I did not want anyone else in the neighborhood to go through that. When the votes were counted, I had won a seat by a comfortable margin. Marcus won 1-2, as did Patricia and 2 other longtime residents who had been vocal critics of Brenda's regime. It felt like a clean sweep, a genuine changing of the guard. Our first board meeting was nothing like the chaotic showdown that had led to Brenda's removal. We met in the same community center, but the atmosphere was completely different. People were relaxed, friendly even. Stephen opened the meeting by laying out his vision for the next year: focus on transparency, community engagement, and practical problem solving. No more petty enforcement of obscure rules. No more treating homeowners like children who needed to be controlled. One of the first items we addressed was the dumpster situation. Stephen proposed creating a formal policy for common area management that included clear guidelines for where shared amenities could be placed and how residents would be notified of changes. It was exactly the kind of common sense governance that had been missing under Brenda. I also think we should have a rule that no dumpster can be placed on an individual lot without explicit written consent from the homeowner, I added. What happened with Brenda dragging that dumpster onto Jason's property should never happen again. Everyone nodded in agreement, and the policy was approved unanimously. Over the next several months, the board worked to rebuild trust with the community. We organized neighborhood barbecues and movie nights in the park. We established a newsletter to keep everyone informed about upcoming projects and decisions. We even created a suggestion box, both physical and digital, where residents could submit ideas or concerns anonymously. One of the most popular initiatives was a community garden project that Patricia spearheaded. She secured a small plot of land near the pool and organized volunteers to help plant vegetables and flowers. It became a gathering place for families, and kids loved being able to pick tomatoes and peppers that they had helped grow. I found myself enjoying the work more than I had expected. Being on the board was not about power or control. It was about service. It was about listening to your neighbors, solving problems, and making the community better for everyone. It was what an HOA was supposed to be. Brenda's shadow still lingered in small ways. Every now and then, someone would mention a fine she had issued or a threat she had made, and the room would go quiet. But those moments became less frequent as time went on, replaced by stories of positive change and community improvement. About a year after the dumpster incident, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Brenda, handwritten on plain white paper. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was brief. Jason, I know you probably do not want to hear from me, but I felt like I owed you an apology. What I did to you and others in the neighborhood was wrong. I let my need for control turn me into someone I did not recognize. Losing my position as HOA president was humiliating, but it was also necessary. I have spent the past year in therapy, working through why I behaved the way I did. I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I am sorry. I hope the neighborhood is thriving without me. Brenda. I read the letter twice, unsure how to feel. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as too little, too late. But another part of me appreciated the effort it had taken for her to write it. People do not change overnight, and real accountability is rare. I showed the letter to Marcus the next time we met for coffee. He read it and shrugged. "What do you think? Is she genuine?" "I do not know," I said, "but I think she is trying. That is more than some people ever do." "Are you going to write back?" "No, I do not think there is anything to say." She apologized, and that is enough. I do not need to reopen that chapter. Marcus nodded. Fair. We never spoke about Brenda again after that. She became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when someone loses sight of why they are in a leadership position. But she was also proof that even the worst situations can lead to positive change. The dumpster, meanwhile, remained in its proper place in the common area, faithfully serving the 8 homes it was supposed to serve. Every time I drove past it, I thought about that crazy afternoon when I had called Southwest Heavy Lift and made the decision to move it to Brenda's property. It had been reckless, maybe even petty. But it had also been necessary. Sometimes, standing up to a bully requires bold action. You cannot always play by the rules when the person in charge is rigging the game. You have to be willing to disrupt the system, to make a statement, even if it means dragging a literal dumpster across the neighborhood. Looking back, I do not regret a single thing I did. The fight with Brenda had been exhausting and stressful, but it had also been empowering. It had reminded me that individuals have power, even when they feel small and helpless. It had shown me that communities are stronger when people work together, when they refuse to accept injustice, and when they hold their leaders accountable. Meadowbrook Estates is a better place now. The streets are still clean, the houses are still well maintained, and the amenities are still available to everyone. But there is something else too, something harder to quantify. There is a sense of pride, a feeling that we all have a stake in what happens here. We are not just residents following rules handed down from on high. We are a community, active participants in shaping our own future. And if someone like Brenda ever tries to take over again, we will be ready. We know what to look for now. We know how to organize, how to fight back, how to protect what we have built. The dumpster taught us that. One evening, about 18 months after the whole ordeal had ended, I was sitting on my back porch with a cold beer, watching the sun set over the Arizona desert. My wind chime was hanging above me, making soft, melodic sounds in the breeze. My grass was a little long, maybe an inch over the recommended height, but nobody cared. My garage door had been open all afternoon while I worked on a project, and nobody had sent me a violation notice. I thought about how close I had come to just accepting Brenda's tyranny, to paying the fines and keeping my head down. It would have been easier, at least in the short term. But it also would have been wrong. Some fights are worth having, even when the stakes seem small. Especially when the stakes seem small, because those are often the fights that matter most to the people living through them. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. She was inviting me to a potluck at the community garden the following weekend. Apparently, the tomatoes were ready for harvest, and she wanted everyone who had helped plant them to come celebrate. I texted back that I would be there. As I sat there on my porch, beer in hand, wind chimes singing above me, I felt something I had not felt in a long time: genuine contentment. Not because everything was perfect, but because I knew I belonged to a community that valued fairness, respect, and accountability. A community where a dumpster was just a dumpster, not a symbol of oppression. And if I ever saw someone trying to drag that dumpster onto someone else's property without permission, I would not hesitate to pick up the phone and call Southwest Heavy Lift again. Some lessons need to be taught more than once. But for now, the dumpster stayed where it belonged, and so did I. Home, in a neighborhood that finally felt like one. The summer passed peacefully, filled with potlucks and pool parties and lazy evenings spent talking with neighbors on our front lawns. The HOA board continued its work, addressing real issues and ignoring the petty nonsense that had consumed so much energy under Brenda's leadership. We approved a new playground for the park, negotiated a better contract with the landscaping company, and organized a neighborhood watch program that actually brought people together instead of turning them into suspicious informants. I never saw Brenda again. I heard she was doing well in Scottsdale, focusing on her legal career and staying far away from HOA politics. I hope that was true. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes and move forward. As for me, I learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not in courtrooms or boardrooms, but in our own backyards. That standing up for what is right does not always require grand gestures or dramatic speeches. Sometimes, it just requires the courage to say no. To refuse to be pushed around. To call a tow truck and move a dumpster, consequences be damned. That dumpster changed everything. It changed the neighborhood, changed the HOA, and changed me. It reminded me that power belongs to the people, not to those who claim authority. And it taught me that even in a world governed by bylaws and covenants and homeowner association rules, human decency still matters most. So here is to community dumpsters, tow trucks, and the courage to fight back when someone tries to dump their problems on your lawn. Here is to good neighbors, fair leaders, and the knowledge that no tyrant, no matter how petty, can stand forever against a community that refuses to be bullied. And here is to Meadowbrook Estates, a neighborhood that learned the hard way what happens when you let someone like Brenda Morrison take control, and what happens when you find the strength to take it back. The dumpster still sits in the common area, right where it should be. And every time I see it, I smile, because I know that I helped put it there, not just physically, but symbolically. I helped create a community where common sense prevails, where people treat each other with respect, and where a dumpster is just a place to throw away trash, not a weapon to wield against your neighbors. That is worth fighting for. That is worth defending. And if I ever have to drag another dumpster across the neighborhood to protect it, I will do it without hesitation. But hopefully, it will never come to that again. Because now, everyone knows what happens when you mess with someone's property, their rights, or their peace of mind. You end up with a dumpster on your lawn, and you deserve every bit of it.